All right, so we have homework problems from page 192 using E and natural log. Let me do a couple in case you're stuck. So let's look at number 5. 5, we have f of x equals e to the 1 over x squared exponent. Okay, so we know that the derivative of e is just itself times the derivative of the exponent. Well, before we do that, we always rewrite when we have a variable in the denominator. Always, always, always. Okay, so we're going to rewrite that first. That's e to the x to the negative 2 power. Okay, that makes our life easier. Now when we're taking the derivative of it, e is its own derivative. So the derivative of that is itself. Every problem, every time, times the derivative of the exponent. Well, the derivative of x to the negative 2 power is negative 2, and then you subtract 1 from the exponent, and it gets x to the negative 3 power. Okay, so negative 2 comes forward, and you get negative 2x, and then you subtract 1 from your exponent, and you get negative 3 power. Now you just have cleanup. All right, so I would say call that negative 2, put the negative 2 in front. I would go ahead and rewrite e the way they gave it to you, which was 1 over x squared. And then because I have x cubed, x to the negative 3, I'm going to put that x cubed in the denominator. Okay, so that's your derivative. Oh, I got to put my little dx right there. Okay, let's do number 7. Again, if you need to, as I always tell you guys, watch this once where you're just watching and listening and soaking in. You may have to repeat it and watch again. Then watch a second time and take notes. If you're only watching it once and the whole time you're taking notes, it's not enough. Your brain's not soaking it in. All right, let's do number 7. Actually, I'm not going to do number 7. I'm just going to set it up because, you know, the setup, just to remind you of the setup. So we have t times e to the square root of t power. All right, so a couple things. First of all, we never, ever, ever work with radicals. We always rewrite them. So that's t times e to the, we call that t to the 1/2 power. Okay? Now what you have is a variable times another expression with a variable. That's product rule. Okay? We never change what we're doing just because we're working with e's or sine or cosine or natural log. If it's a product, you do product rule. Okay, so try not to tell yourself it's different. It's really not. So the derivative of the first, derivative of t. Remember, t is just like x. If you want to, rewrite it with all x's. You could call that x times e to the x to the 1/2 power, if that makes it easier for you. All right, derivative of t is just 1 times the second expression plus derivative of the second expression. Derivative of e is itself times the derivative of the angle. So again, not the angle, the exponent. The 1/2 comes forward. I subtract a whole number 1 from my exponent. I get to the negative 1/2 power. And then I have to multiply that times the first, which is t. Okay, so this is derivative of the first, d first, times the second, plus all this is derivative of the second, times the first. Okay, your cleanup. And we did one, I think, identical to this in class. So please, please, please make sure you're looking at your notes. When you're stuck, never say, oh, well, because we did one exactly like this in class where we had to combine those two. T to the negative 1/2 times t to the first. Remember, you're adding exponents. So that gives you t to the positive 1/2. So again, you've seen that before. I'm going to, t to the 1/2, I'm going to write that back as a square root, just like they gave it to us. So I have it here too, square root of t. And then those two combine, again, that's t to the first. They give you t to the 1/2 power. So that's square root of t. I'm going to put that in front here, square root of t. And then that thing is over this little 2, because you got a 1/2. Okay, your book may write it as 1/2 square root of t times e to the square root of t. You know, just don't say, oh gosh, if you see it like this and your book has it like that, you can't say, oh, I have something totally different. Always look at the book answer and see, is it really the same as what I wrote? So that's number 7. Oh, I said I wasn't going to do it and I did it. That's crazy talk. All right, I'm going to close this video and I'll do number 9 in a separate video. Hey, so I do want to mention this. I added to it. What I did is stop the video, look at the format they have it in the back of the book. I think this is what a lot of you are running into. So here's the answer we got. Okay, so let's look at this. Square root of t, e to the square root of t power over 2. Okay, that's not what you see in the back of the book. So please don't look in the back of the book and say, oh gosh, I got something different. I must be doing it wrong. I'll just ask in class. See if you can figure out what they did. They have, instead of 2 fractions being added together, and number 7 in the answer, they have just 1 fraction. That always means they got a common denominator and combined it. Okay, so we can do that. If we're going to combine these two and make it 1 fraction, I have to have a common denominator. So you multiply that top and bottom by 2. Okay, so now when I add these two, I got 2 e to the square root of t plus square root of t, e to the square root of t. And now I have just 1 fraction. Well, that's still not what they have, but look at what they did. Okay, so they just have that little 1, they call it exp, and then t to the 1/2 power. So, Joe's going to like it. Joe, you're going to like it because they left it as fraction exponent. Anyway, so they just have that e at the end. Well, I have 2 e's. I have an e here and an e here. They only have 1. Stop and think about what they did. They factored it out since it's in common. Okay, so they took that e to the square root of t out. That leaves you with 2 plus square root of t over 2. Okay, and instead of putting that in front, they put it in back. Okay, and again, they have t to the 1/2 power instead of square root of t. And they have e t to the 1/2 instead of square root of t. Okay, so this, if this is the answer up here that you got, it's the same thing they got. You have to force yourself to look at what they got and say, all right, I'm going to look at what I did. Notice things like, gee, I have 2 things. 2 fractions, sort of. They only have 1. That means they did this. Okay, and then if you look and say, well, they only have 1 e statement. They call it exp. I have 2. That means they factored it out. So try to interpret what the answer is saying, and that will help you determine whether or not you're doing it correctly.